Hi, Michael Weber here, Artistic Director of Chicago's Porchlight Music Theater with this edition of Cole Porter in Hollywood. Today, 1957 from MGM Studios. Silk Stockings, which was the film version of the 1955 hit Broadway musical, which also happened to be Cole Porter's final show written directly for Broadway. It was an adaptation of a 1939 film comedy called Ninotchka, which originally starred Greta Garbo. Our film musical version stars the incomparable Fred Astaire, with Sid Charisse, Janice Page doing a fairly obvious impression of Esther Williams, Peter Lorre, Jules Munchin, and George Tobias, who was not only in the film musical version, he was in the stage musical version and also in the original film version in 1939, but playing a different role in that production. Now, the original Broadway show had a book by George S. Kaufman and Abe Burrows and Laureen McGrath, who was George S. Kaufman's wife at the time. So that tells you, with Kaufman and Burrows, their most recent hit being Guys and Dolls, that this is going to be a very fun and funny old school musical comedy, and that it is. The source material holds up. Kaufman and Burrows and McGrath's additions to it make it even more fun, and Cole Porter's score sends it right through the roof. Now, the original Broadway show starred Don Amici and Hildegard Neff, neither of whom were dancers. They were predominantly musical comedy singer actors. But when you got Fred Astaire and Sid Charisse, you are going to want to really emphasize the dancing, and that's exactly what they did in this production. Fred Astaire and Sid Charisse were last seen together in the 1953 classic, The Bandwagon, so producers were really excited to get them together in this, which would be ultimately Fred Astaire's final starring film musical. He did other musical works on television. He also was in film musicals on the big screen, including Finian's Rainbow. But this is the last time you see him as a leading man. It's one of the rare times also that you get to see Sid Charisse as the leading lady. She was very frequently in supporting roles, but here it's Fred and Sid Charisse through the entire film, and they're just sensational. The musical numbers just pop. They've got wonderful dance sequences. They're both at the top of their game. The musical score is very much intact of what you saw on the Broadway stage. There were a few small changes. The song, As On Through the Seasons We Sailed, was changed to a new Cole Porter song called Fated to be Mated. The title song, Silk Stockings, removed the lyric and just became a dance number for Sid Charisse. They did something similar when they made the film version of Can Can. And then there was one brand new song called The Ritz Roll and Rock, which was essentially Fred Astaire's 11 o'clock number. And it's very pointed and poignant in the sense that Fred Astaire is once again, and for the final time, in Top Hat and Tails, but he's singing a song and performing in a number that's all about the arrival of rock and roll. The last moment in that number, he smashes down that famous Fred Astaire top hat, basically saying, rock and roll is here to stay. My way of doing musicals is gone, and see you later, folks. This is a really funny film with great performances. Janice Page must be noted that she was an actor who had a film contract at Warner Brothers until about 1950. Her film career really wasn't going anywhere, and she decided to go back to Broadway, where she appeared in Remains to be Seen in 1951, and then really hit it big in 1954 as the star of The Pajama Game. That brought her back to everybody's attention and back to Hollywood rather triumphantly in this film. She is hilariously funny and just kills every scene she's in, and is stealing moments from Fred Astaire every time they're on screen together. Unfortunately, also happening in 1957, back at Warner Brothers, was the film version of The Pajama Game. Once again, Warner Brothers didn't See the Light with Janice Page. They cast Doris Day, who was probably more bankable in that film, but she's over here at MGM killing it in Silk Stockings. So you get to see Janice Page at the height of her powers. Also, a film musical with Peter Lorre, and he's a riot. He can't sing, he can't dance, but he's in big musical numbers, and you can't keep your eyes off of him because he's such a brilliant actor. He's having the time of his life, and he's just such an asset to this film. With Kaufman and Burroughs, once again, you get satire here. It's, a show from 1955, 1957. It's the height of the Cold War. It was a great idea to use Ninotchka, which was all about sort of Russian and American, or in this case, Soviet Union conflict and the idea of ways of looking at society. There's a lot of spoofing and satire of extreme far left politics in this, of the Hollywood studio system, of the dynamics of cultural appropriation, and the societal explosion that was happening in America with the arrival of rock and roll. This is a super smart musical. It's very funny. And it was a big flop when it first came out in 1957. But I think it's one of those rare shows that has really aged well, and we've caught up to what the authors were going after here in terms of what they wanted to say about the world and about far right and far left politics. And it really holds together very well. I think you're going to have a lot of fun. Give it a try. Silk Stockings from 1957 from the wonderful MGM Studios.
Fred Astaire, footloose and fancy-free, a playboy in Paris, looking for a playmate. Sid Charisse is a stranger in town, strictly on business.
Only in Paris, one discovers the urge to merge with the splurge of the spring.
A pair of silk stockings and a pair of lovely legs can do a lot for a gal. And also something for her surprise boyfriend.
Oh, no. It can't be.
I don't look too foolish?
Foolish? Why, you're only the most beautiful girl in Paris. I'll prove it to you. We'll cover the town.
And they really do cover it, as Sid learns what it is to be a girl, and Fred proves to be a great teacher to have on tap. And even Janice Page discovers that an anatomic reaction is sometimes more effective than the scientific kind.
So you may have to persuade him.
How can I persuade him if you can't?
Because we're built differently.
But she knows 'cause she has traveled miles. She can always lay 'em in the aisles. If she's wearing silk and satin, she can fly